All right, let's start our introduction to value. This is going to be a unit that we spend a little bit of time on. We're going to do a couple different projects with value. One, because it's really important, and two, because many of you said you wanted to get better at shading in your introduction survey and learn about value and how to both see it in an artwork and then replicate it with a pencil or another tool is going to be a big step in making artwork that you're happy with. So, all value is an element of art, and it refers to the range between black and white that's in an image. So it can be black and white, it can be just steps of gray. Value can also be in color, but for our introduction, we're going to stick with the black and white images. However, value is, again, anything that goes from white to black and all the steps in the middle. That's all value. So when you have value, um, you're going to get things that look more like they have depth, like they actually have form. And right now, the simple line drawing of a circle on a table doesn't do much to look like it has any form or depth. It just looks like a circle. If you want to make that look like a sphere, you have to use shading and value to do that. Here you can see there's a highlight, there's shadows, there's a reflective light in the shadow, there's a shadow on the table, and all that conveys form very accurately. And then again here, you have a high contrast image. So you have black and white with no gray, just high contrast. And you can see what it is. You can see it's like a 3D object. But when you start adding value, you get much more sense of all the curves and all the planes of that form. So a couple new vocabs. We have high key, and those are images that have mostly high or white values. Then low key is the opposite, images that have mostly low or dark values. Then lastly, value contrast. That's just how much different values an artwork would have in it, so the range of values. So let's look at some examples. Here's Claude Monet, famous Impressionist artist, and he loved to paint outside in the sun. And to get that glimmering effect, he would keep most of his artwork high key. So he has mostly light or white values. That kind of makes a very shimmery effect. It replicates sunshine very wonderfully. You can see here when it's black and white, there's some darks, but it's overwhelmingly white values and light values. And then opposite, we have Johnson or Sargent here, another post-impressionist, and he's trying to paint inside. So if you're going to try and paint something inside, especially at night, he wanted to use low-key values, very dark, and really conveys that sense of an interior because of how dark this artwork is. And then next, value contrast. So this is a famous Mona Lisa painting. I'm sure you've all seen this one. And this is important because you get to see, this is just having a range of light to dark. When you do have a range of light to dark, you have value contrast in your artwork. This one clearly has lights, clearly has darks, has a nice range. Now, artworks don't have to be either low key or high key. They don't have to have value contrast. It's just some things you can do to start thinking about work and seeing how they're different. So for instance, these two works, they have contrast in them. If you look here in the flowers, that red is so different from that green or that teal. And then here, the dresses are all very different colors. But if you make these black and white, your value contrast is limited. So here, the value contrast is really regulated to the bowl and that collar on the vase. And here, we have value contrast, but overall, there's a very limited value range in this artwork. This blue and brown show no difference, essentially, and practically with the red too. Really no difference in value. So colors can be different. Colors, again, are complicated, but values can really show you, when you break something down to black and white, it can show you how much value your work is having. In general, having value contrast is a really helpful thing for most work, especially when you're beginning and when you're starting out. And then to use value in a representational way to make things look more realistic, what you want to do is the further away something appears in your picture plane, the lighter it should be. And the closer it is to you, the higher your value contrast. So specifically, look here in this faraway horizon. It's very light here. The clouds, the sky, whatever this is, if it's ocean or mountains, that's all very light. And then every step as you get closer gets a little bit darker in value. And then by the time you get to the front, we have a range of darks and lights, because things that are close to you would have a range of darks and lights. Things that are far away from you can only really be light. You're not going to see any black shadows all the way back here. And you see this as of values of black and white work, you can see very specifically how this artist built up their values. They get darker as they come forward, and the range also gets wider. There's very small range back in the far background. So there's really, with pencil, 3 ways to convey value. You have shading, and that's when you use kind of like the side of your pencil. It's probably what you're all most familiar with doing. There's cross-hatching, which is where you just take a line and you cross it with another line. So a single line is a hatch. Cross-hatching is when you have 2 lines. You can see here we have lines that intersect. That's cross-hatching. And stippling is 1 little dot at a time. Very meditative, very soft edges. This is very hard edges, and this can kind of be either. So a few examples. This is a nice little still life with shading. Very soft, very accurate, nice range of value. And then cross-hatching, you can see if you look closely, little lines going in different directions to make all the shadows. There's no point where this artist used their finger to smudge their pencil, and no point where this artist used the side of their pencil to shade. This is all just very soft lines. In the center of the circle, soft lines, and the shadows, darker lines. Beautiful technique. And cross-hatching is actually a fun little look into it. A lot of printmaking is done with cross-hatching. And Albrecht Dürer is the most famous printmaker. He lived in the 1600s. He made very iconic prints. And the way he made these was he carved them onto copper plates with very sharp tools. So you can see, because he was carving, he had to do a cross-hatching method. And when you zoom into a plate, if you zoom into this one spot on the plate, you can see how detailed his lines get. His work is absolutely beautiful. And they've actually had artists try and replicate his studio practice, trying to see how he made his plates, and so far no one has been able to accurately replicate his level of detail. Some fun little historical facts for you. Now stippling, again, nice and soft, beautiful look to a work, and a lot of patience for this one, because this is all just done by tiny dots. So what we're going to do to get familiar with value in pencil and controlling our technique with our pencil is we're going to make 9-step grayscales. You're going to do white to black, and you're going to do it by, in your sketchbook, I suggest you put your page horizontally, and then you're going to map out one row with 1.5 by 1 inch rectangles. So you can see this is the 1.5 inch side, this is the 1 inch side. Your sketchbooks are 9 by 12, so this should fit just fine in your work or on the page. And you can start on either side. You can start on the left or on the right or in the middle. I personally think that starting in the middle is a little easier, because you can kind of see what your middle value is, and then know you have to go darker and lighter than that. And it's 9 steps because I really want to push you and challenge you to get an even, steady change of value for each one, so that each rectangle looks different and is evenly colored. So this is a little example. This here on the far left, no. That's not a good way of creating value, because this is so inconsistent. It doesn't go to the edge of the rectangle. You can see in here, there's all different levels where the pencil is darker than other areas. Like I said, I like to start with my lightest, my medium, and then my darkest to see how dark I can make my mark making tool. And that kind of lets me know what else I can do in the scale. I actually, with this one, made that far right one much darker, just to give myself a little more leeway for making these. But you want to just do shading, white to black, with 7 steps in between those white and black. Once you've done that, you want to try one with cross-hatching and with stippling. Both should be done with 9 steps. These examples aren't 9 steps, but yours will be. And for stippling or cross-hatching, you can do either pencil or Sharpie. You might find with stippling that Sharpie goes a lot faster, but it's also kind of meditative, so hopefully that's a nice process that you can enjoy. The shading obviously has to be pencil, because you're going to be making very specific marks. So that's the intro to value, and that's how you're going to start learning about it. So we'll be doing our grayscales together in class on Tuesday. So whether you're home or whether you're in person, this is what you'll come to class, pull out your sketchbook, and we'll start working on these once the bell rings. All right, if you have any questions, let me know at the start of Tuesday's class.